Okay, in 6.5, we're going to be solving square root equations and other radical equations, and we've basically done this before. It's when you had, say, square root of x is equal to 3. To get the x out of the radical, the inverse operation of a square root is squaring it, so you would square both sides, and then x is equal to 9. So that concept is the same, except it's not just the x inside the square root anymore. But I have to get that whatever is inside that square root, I have to get that by itself first. So I have this 3 on the outside that's being added to the square root, so I'm going to get rid of that by subtracting 3 from both sides. And I'm left with the square root of 2x minus 3 is equal to 5. I can't add the 3 here because it's inside of the radical. Okay, so I got to get rid of the radical first before I can do anything with what's inside that radical. So to get rid of the radical, again, the inverse operation of a square root is squaring it. So I'm going to square both sides, and I'm left with 2x minus 3 is equal to 25. Now it's just solving for x. Add 3 to both sides. 2x is equal to 28. Divide by 2, and x is equal to 14. And you can check that by plugging it back in. 3 plus square root of 2 times 14 minus 3 is equal to 8. So I have 3 plus the square root of 28 minus 3 is equal to 8. 28 minus 3 becomes 25. 3 plus the square root of 25, well, that's 3 plus 5, and that is equal to 8. So it does work. Okay, so for this one, understand this is still a radical because this parentheses is being raised to a fraction. So I need to get that fraction, that exponent on that parentheses to become a 1, and then I would have x plus 1 raised to the first, which is just x plus 1. Before I do anything with that, though, I got to notice I have this 3 that's on the outside. Okay? And I got to get rid of that first before I can do anything with that parentheses. So because it's being multiplied with that parentheses, I'm going to divide by 3. And I have x plus 1 raised to the 2 over 3 is equal to 4. Now what I'm going to do, in order to get this exponent to become a 1, I'm going to have to multiply by its reciprocal. Okay, because any fraction multiplied by its reciprocal becomes 1. Well, in order to multiply that fraction with another fraction, I'm going to raise it to another power. So I'm raising that whole side to the reciprocal of 3 over 2. And if I do that, then I need to raise this side to 3 over 2. Okay, and what happens is now I have x plus 1, okay, and then I distribute to the exponent there, and that's going to become 6 over 6, which is just 1. Okay, so I have x plus 1 raised to the first, which is just x plus 1. Now, I can simplify this 4 raised to the 3/2 by changing it to radical form. It's going to be the square root of 4 cubed. The square root of 4 becomes 2. Okay, but this is where you got to understand what you're doing here. All right, and be careful with this. This is a step that people forget a lot. When I did this step here, what I'm doing, because this denominator here is even, I'm really taking the even root of both sides. And remember, whenever you take the square root of both sides, you got to have plus or minus. So it's got to be plus or minus when you take the square root or even root of both sides, not the odd root. So if it's odd, you don't need the plus or minus. If it's odd in the denominator, you're looking at the denominator because that's your root, that's your index. Okay, so because that was even, I need the plus or minus. So I have x plus 1. I'm going to come up here, is equal to 8, but also x plus 1 is equal to negative 8. So when I subtract 1, I get x is equal to 7, but also negative 9. Okay, here I have a radical, but I have something being multiplied to that radical and something being added. Understand that this 1 is not inside of the radical. Okay, it's on the outside. So before I do anything to get rid of the radical, I need to take care of those things that are not inside of it. I got to get the radical by itself. So I'm first going to subtract the 1. And I have 3 times the 5th root of x plus 1. Now that's being cubed on the inside is equal to 24. Then divide by 3 because that 3 is being multiplied to that radical. And I have the 5th root of x plus 1 raised to the 3rd is equal to 8. Now because it's both a radical and an exponent, I'm going to change that to exponential form. So I have x plus 1 raised to the 3 over 5 is equal to 8. All I did was change that to exponential form. Now to get rid of that exponent, I'm going to raise both sides to its reciprocal, 5 over 3. Okay, so this becomes x plus 1, and because this is an odd root, an odd denominator, I do not need the plus or minus here. It's just the 1. It's one solution to that, one answer. So I'm going to change this to radical form, the cube root of 8 raised to the 5th. The cube root of 8 becomes 2. 2 to the 5th becomes 32. And then subtract 1 and x is equal to 31. Okay, here's some U-try problems. Make sure you understand this 5 is not inside the radical. This 30 is not inside the radical. Okay, so you got to be very specific now when you're writing that radical to make sure you only put it over what you want on the inside of it. All right, I'll give you a joke. How do you make an egg roll? You push it.